A deaf man could hear you. Welcome back, Mel Brooks. It's been too long. Roll it. Welcome back to Time for Truth with J.C. Williams. First, let me say that for everyone who has elected to follow and subscribe to the channels or the socials as it may be, thank you. This is a small operation, obviously. And, I want it understood that I'm not doing this for the purposes of monetization or even trying to create some Jesus empire or Hebrew Roots kingdom. I do this because when you know the things that I know, you become under obligation to share them with others, especially for people who are new coming into this, because you want to get off on the right foot, as it were. And for people who have been in this for quite a while and feel like they've kind of hit the wall, this is the doorway to a new chapter in the adventure, or what should be the adventure of your faith. This is to be exciting and inspiring and not a chore, which to me is what church began to feel like. Eventually we're going to do a special series about a concept that came to me just recently, which I think was, I'm pretty sure an inspiration, a divine message, as it were, about, what's expected of the servants, or what I would call, in my case and in a lot of other cases, the watchmen for the days ahead. You see, the watchmen have always been there. Even throughout the centuries, from the time that this faith was usurped by Constantine and transformed into a new form of pagan sun god worship, which spread throughout the West and eventually crossed over here into America. Even the people that did not know these things that we know now, and they couldn't know them because it wasn't the time for these things to be known. Now, that's a very long and detailed teaching. Actually, my teacher, Mike Rood, he's got a great series called The Jonah Code, and I would very strongly recommend that you check that out, as well as getting a copy of the Chronological Gospels. There are three primary aspects to what we do here that we outlined in the previous episode, primer, and just the preface of the Chronological Gospels alone could be like a year's worth of shows. So I encourage you to get that, learn these things, so that when you join in here, you're going to be coming in geared up with a good bit of knowledge that will help you to understand, so that you're not getting completely blindsided. I do want to say one more thing about the Watchmen. My great-grandparents, my great-grandfather especially, he was the epitome of a watchman. They practically laid the foundational bricks at the church that they attended for the majority of their adult lives. And, my great-grandfather, by the time I came into the world and he knew me, I mean, man, wherever he walked, like just a trail of light followed him. He had achieved a spiritual connection and a zen that was all his own. And I look to him, every day of my life, trying to live up to what he showed me, and my dad as well. When I was little, when I was born, my biological parents, my mother and my father, they were far too young to be married. And so they split. My mom went to college. That's where she met my stepdad, who I consider to be my dad. Hi, Dad. And, they were going to school, getting their degrees and working at the phone company, and that's where they met. In the interim, I was being raised from the time I was just a baby up until I went to kindergarten by my great-grandparents, and I continued to spend every weekend with them, going to church with them, and also, just being around them, and have so many great memories, of course. But, I can still see as clear as day both of them in the evening as I'm sitting there watching TV, and they're both in the one luxury that they afforded themselves in life, which was a couple of really nice recliners. And I could just see it right now, plain as day. They're both kicking back in their recliners. They've both got their Bibles, big Bibles cracked open, and they're reading, taking notes. And so, that's what I had coming up as a little kid, and I was very fortunate to have that. The point being, the watchmen have always been there. Regardless of whether the Catholic Church or Protestant, I would say a little bit less so in the modern non-denominational situation, because that is a transition that has occurred almost simultaneously with the coming of this knowledge and information, but yet there may still be those folks in there. But the watchmen were always the people who like to, what I call, practice Solomon, which is being the last person to speak, ears always open. And that was my great-grandfather. And because they were servants for so long, I mean, my great-grandmother, she worked in that church nursery. I don't know if my grandmother was in there, but I know my mom was there. I know her sister was there. I know that my cousin and I were there. So when I say that they had laid the foundational bricks in that church, I'm not telling tall tales. They've been there for a very long time. And because they had served for such a long time, and my great-grandfather especially, when he actually spoke up and said something, if there was a wrong to be righted, it carried weight. So there have always been the watchmen there. And now we're just entering a new phase where the watchmen are being asked to come to the forefront and to lead. And that's where we're at right now. And they might be doing it still in these churches today, or they might be doing it through social media, operating independently. But they are there. They've always been there. So, it's good to know that, the truth has always been there. When you read the Word, when you spend time with this, right, you're going to eventually come to odds with whatever doctrine is being espoused. I used to have to explain. I hosted a men's Bible study at a local homeless shelter for a number of years before COVID. And when somebody would ask me what a denomination was, I would tell them a denomination is two men fighting over the religious doctrine of a church who can't come to an amicable agreement, and one goes the other way and starts his own denomination, his own church. That's what a denomination is. So, yeah, it is what it is. So we're going to get into this, and I will see you at our next sequence. Thank you. Okay, let's get right into this. If you have a copy of the Chronological Gospels, we are looking at page 106, Incident 68, Yeshua and His Disciples harvest, winnow, and grind grain. Now, when you're watching this program right now, this was the same day that this actually happened. This is why having the Chronological Gospels is so great. You can go week by week and follow what went down in the ministry of Yeshua as time goes by every week. What a great tool to have. Get it? Okay. So, just a quick little preface to this. We're going to be looking primarily at Luke and also at Mark on this. Now, each of the gospel authors, they have a different perspective on the ministry of Yeshua. For instance, Matthew is recording Yeshua as the king. He's laying down the rules of the kingdom. Mark, as it were, is recording Yeshua as the servant. He is the servant. He is on mission. He has something that has to be done, and he has a short amount of time with which to do it, and he gets it done in 70 weeks, not 2.5 years like you silly Greeks and Romans would want everyone to believe. But I digress. There's a history behind that, which is why I suggest that you get this book, because the preface to all of this contains all of this history. You know, Michael did a ton of work, a lifetime's worth of work putting this together, and we get to benefit from it. So the link is below. Get a copy of this. Learn the backstory of how all of this came to be and why we have now this incredible text that allows us to understand so much more than we ever did before. So, let's get right into it, shall you? We're going to go ahead and start with Luke here. So here we go, Luke 6:1. On the second Sabbath after the first, Yeshua went through the wheat fields, and his disciples plucked the ears of grain, rubbed them in their hands, and ate. Some of the prushim, stop for a moment. Prushim is the Hebrew word for Pharisee. So, Pharisee, prushim. Zadokim, Sadducee. Moving on. Some of the prushim said unto them, Why do you do that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath days? Yeshua answered them, You have not read much, have you? This is my Messiah right here. Doe-eyed Jesus is a myth. This man was on mission. Wonderful. I love it. What did David do when he and those who were with him were hungry? He went into the house of Jehovah and took the showbread and ate it, and he also gave to those who were with him. The showbread is not lawful to eat except by the priests alone. Then he said to them, The Son of Man is likewise master of the Sabbath. Ooh. Man, gotta love that. You know what? let's go ahead and hit Matthew 2. Why not? At the time Yeshua went through the wheat fields on the Sabbath day, his disciples were hungry and began to pluck the ears of grain and to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, Behold, your disciples do that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath day. But he said to them, Have you not read what David did when he was hungry, and those who were with him? He entered into the house of Jehovah and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Have you not read in the Torah how on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say to you that in this place is one greater than the temple. If you had known what this means, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. The Son of Man is master, even of the Sabbath day. All right. So let's get a little context going on this here. Let's back it up. And we'll look at a note here regarding what we read from Luke. By Pharisee law, it became impossible for the poor to feed themselves on the Sabbath day by walking into a field and plucking the grains as provided by the Torah. Now, this is one of the commandments in the Torah. If you have a field, be it barley, wheat, whatever, vegetables, or a vineyard, the outer perimeter of that field is to be left for the poor who are walking by the way so that they can feed themselves. Did Yehovah not provide for everything? Of course he did. This is why the Torah lives. This is why the Torah is important. And if you entered into this agreement of lordship with Yeshua when you marched your happy little rear down to the altar and said your little prayer, okay, that's just phase one, just so you know. But you agreed to have the Torah written upon your heart. So it's important for you to know these things. And as we go along, when we come across commandments, we're going to go into those. And I may even put together maybe a separate little presentation, a commandment study, very short, sweet, and to the point, just to kind of help round things out a little bit. But for now, I've got to keep things kind of simple and to the point because I am involved in some other things that are need-to-know basis at this point. But, you know, as far as making these videos go, just shooting them, you know, no big deal. The time consumption comes when you start doing editing. And now I understand why professional content creators hire people from Crimea and second world countries for pennies on the dollar to do this tedious stuff because, yeah, it takes up a lot of time. But I digress. Moving on. Anyway, the Pharisees decreed that plucking the grain heads was harvesting, rubbing the chaff off of the grain was threshing, I love it, and eating the grain was grinding. I tell you what, it makes me think of, what's that guy, Family Guy, Peter. Yeah, this grinds my gears, yeah. Yeah, religion will grind your gears, no question about that. Yeshua taught his disciples by example to disregard the rules of man-made religion, and this is the key to everything. Everything. Moving on. Let's go to... Actually, you know what? Before we do that, let's go ahead and take a look at a note here from our reading from Matthew, because this is important. At the Rosh Chodesh feast at Matthew's house, which happens, or did happen, at the sighting of the new moon, first Sabbath, the sighting of the new moon. And we're going to talk about the feasts quite a bit here because I'll tell you something I've come to understand. fellowship where everyone who is on the same page gets together 2 or 3 times a year, 3 required by the Torah, that we can still observe, even though we don't have a temple. We can still get together and observe these things. The Festival of Shelters, Festival of Sukkot, so important. And if you live in this part of the world, in the southwestern United States, especially where I am at here in New Mexico, I tell you what, that last week of September is just primo camping time. But we'll get into all that stuff a little bit later. So it says, you should have told the Pharisees, go and find out what this means. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. So this is at Matthew's house feast. 9 days later, he insults them in their synagogue by saying that they still do not have a clue as to the meaning of Hosea 6:6. For I desired mercy and not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. If they truly understood the prophecy in its context, they would not condemn the innocent nor conspire to have him killed. But this is what religion does. Religion sacrifices truth. Religion blinds you to doctrines, most of which are just complete garbage. And so to let that go and to seek after the truth is the greatest endeavor you will ever experience in your life. It shapes everything. And the more that you align yourself with the Almighty, right, the more that you will receive real blessings, the more that you will receive real gifts, protection, power, not abusive power, but the kind of power that can be used to transform not only your own life, but the lives of others. And that's what this is all about. We're not here to enrich ourselves. I've told you before, I'm not in this for the money. I'm not here because I want to create some kind of social media empire. I'm here because I found that gem in the field, that perfect diamond, and I sold everything and bought the field. So I'm here to share that with you. That's why this is happening. So let's go on to Mark. We'll close out our reading tonight. Yeshua walked through the wheat fields on the Sabbath day, and his disciples began to pluck the ears of grain as they went. The Pharisees said to him, look, why do they do that which is not lawful to do on the Sabbath day? And Yeshua said to them, have you never read what David and those who were with him did when they had need and were hungry? He went into the house of Yehovah in the days of Abiathar the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. Kohen Gadol equals high priest, and ate the showbread, which is not lawful to eat but for the priests, and he gave also to those who were with him. Then he said to them, oh baby, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is likewise the master of the Sabbath. And that's our master. Right from the get-go. He's not having it. He is there to correct the wrongs. And this is what we who possess this knowledge and this understanding are called to do. There are a lot of people out there who have bought into a complete fantasy. And it's sad. You know, we have such a short time upon this earth, not only to figure ourselves out, but, which is an ongoing process, believe you me, but we strive after the example that was set by our Master, by our Mashiach, by our Yeshua. That's why we're here. And in doing so, when we study His Word, when we study the Torah, when we go through the Old Testament and we see how things link together, how it all forms one picture, the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, all happening at once, it gives you a different perspective on all this. So I want all of you out there to keep in mind that my mission here is not so much to grind your gears, though I admit I do actually enjoy that a little bit. It's who I am. But, I want you to have a greater understanding of things. And I want you, above all else, to understand that at the end of the day, all I can do is lead you to the door. I can't save you. I'm not saved. Nobody is saved. No one gets saved until we're almost extinct as a species, and Yeshua comes and pulls those of us who managed to hold on to that point, pulls our fannies out of the fryer. That's what being saved is. Just because you go to an altar and you say a prayer of lordship, that doesn't mean that you just got your e-ticket to heaven. That's a fantasy. And the idea that you're getting out of here alive when the Master didn't get out of here alive, you're dreaming. So get with the program. Learn the real truth. Learn the knowledge. Be a part of this. Grow, learn, live, and share it with others. And always, always remember. Mr. Gabriels, Mr. Bowie, take us to that heavenly roadhouse and let's get on out of here. I'll see you next time, and God bless. Thank you.